Hello, welcome to part two of the Fancy Name Project. You should have already watched part one, in which I showed you how to open Adobe Illustrator, save it onto your dock down here. Remember, that was holding on to the icon and saying options, keep in dock, make sure that's there. And then you went through and did some of these hands-on tutorials, just exploring the program and getting familiar with where things are at. Now we're going to start actually making the project that's called the Fancy Name Project, in which you're going to type your name and make it fancy. So here is how we're going to start. First, you're going to go over here to the left-hand side where you see the word New File. If you don't see New File here, you can always go to Home. Click, there's a little Home button here at the very, very top, or sometimes it's over here on the left. So it's over in this area in Illustrator. You click Home, and then you should see New File. If you still don't see the New File option, you can always go to the Word file, as long as you're in Illustrator, and say New. Either way you do this, you're going to get to the same window. So when we say New File here, you're going to get this pop-up window. In here, you're going to set this, and I'm going to walk you through these settings here because they are important. If you accidentally put the wrong thing, you could end up with a dock that is the size of your pinky nail instead of the size of a piece of paper, which is what we were going for today. So number one, first name this file. You're going to name it what I said to name it in the Google Classroom, which is Fancy, and then your name. So I'm going to put my first and last name. Okay, Fancy Valerie White, that's me. And then I'm going to go my width and my height. Number one, most important thing is that it is inches here. If we set this as pixels or points or picas, we're going to end up with 1/16 of an inch, things like that. So we want to make sure that this is in inches, okay? Muy importante, inches. Then you're going to say 11 by 8.5. And make sure that the orientation, we want this to basically, it'll be a wide piece by having the width wider than the height. So 11 by 8.5, one artboard, and we do not need to worry about the bleed here, so we're just going to leave that at 0. Our color mode, we are going to make this CMYK because CMYK is formatted colors for printing. Cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. That's what CMYK stands for. Those are the colors that are in your printer. RGB stands for red, green, and blue, and those are the color of the lights, the LED lights that are in your computer, which give you different color results. So we're going with CMYK. Raster effects, you can put that as 300 PPI right now, and go ahead and say create. It should look exactly like this, except for it should have your name here instead of mine. Fancy, your first and last name. Go ahead and say create. And you should end up with a file that looks like this. It should look like a horizontal or, portrait style piece of paper. You're also going to have your window looking slightly different than mine. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to set my window to look just like your window. If I go up here to my workspace choices, I'm going to reset my essentials. So basically my space should look just like your space does right now. I have my tools over here on the left-hand side. I have on the right-hand side here, I have 3 tabs. I have one called Properties, one called Layers, and one called Libraries. We are going to be using Properties and Layers, but Layers are important because Layers is how things works in Illustrator. Properties, this particular panel of properties changes depending on what you have clicked. So right now we have nothing on our artboard, and if I'm clicking on my artboard or my workspace, this information all pertains to my workspace or my artboard. So I could edit my artboards now. I can change my units and things like that. If I had something on my artboard, go ahead and I'm going to put something on here, and you can see over here on the right-hand side what's going to happen if I put something on my artboard. So for example here, I'm going to use my pen tool and I'm just going to notice this changed already. And I'm just going to make like a crazy heart. Notice that properties panel over there. See what it did? It changed based on what I have selected. And if I come over here and I just alter this a little bit to make it look a little bit better. It still looks a little wonky. And I use my black selection tool, which you're going to use a lot in this project. And I select this heart. Notice over here, now I have even different choices. So here, if I click over here, you see I have artboard choices. Click on this actual shape. And now I have choices over here, like it's giving me a choice. Do I want to fill this with a different color? Why, yes, I do. Why do I want to maybe change the stroke color, which is the outline of the piece? Maybe I do. Maybe I'll make it green. I can't see it. It's too small. Maybe I want to make my stroke bigger, right? Maybe I want to change the opacity. Maybe I want to make it transparent so that if there was something else on top of it, you can see that it's transparent a little bit. So you have some choices here, and this properties panel will change depending on what you have selected, just so you guys know that. All right, so getting rid of that. What we're going to do here is we're going to start out with your layers here, and you're going to double click on the text of this first layer, layer 1, and you're going to rename it. Double clicking it lets you like rename it. We're going to call this name, an AME name. All right. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go over here and actually, hold on. We're going to do one more thing. At the top of your box here, you notice there's nothing up here. It's pretty blank. I would like us all to open up what's called the control window. So we're going to go to the word window, and we're going to open up the word control. All of these things that are under window are all windows you can add to your workspace. But right now we want to say control. So click on control so that it will have a checkbox next to it. Now you see, now that it's on, it has a checkbox. Notice up here at the top, now you have some more options, similar to what you have over here in the properties panel, okay? So I have my layer named name, and now I have my control panel open. And I'm now going to go over here to the left, and I'm going to use my type tool. My type tool is the letter T. You can get to that tool by clicking the letter T, or you can just click on the actual tool. Either way will open up this tool. There are two things you need to know before you even use this tool. There are two different ways to use it right off the bat. So if I have this tool in my hand, it's going to look like that. It has like a little cursor in a box. Here, I'm going to start out with what not to do, okay? Do not go like this. If you go like this and you drag a box, and now watch what happens when I let go of my mouse. It will fill that box that I just pulled with filler text, placeholder text. I don't need placeholder text. I'm not writing a book here. I'm not writing a magazine or anything like that. I don't need that. I just need one word. If you were to fill this and then say, oh no, I messed up, I didn't mean to do that, and then just like delete it all and type your name, you are still in a bad way right now, because if I was to use my black selection tool and I grab the corner here and I try to like say, I want to make it bigger. Look at the name does not move. The words, the letters don't move. Only the bounding box moves. That's not what I want. Okay. So I'm going to push delete. What you do want to do with this type tool is just click. So I'm just going to click once with my mouse, and it drops a cursor, and you can see it's got placeholder text there, but it's highlighted. So I can just go ahead and start typing my name here. So I'm going to say, I'm just going to do my first name. I think we're all probably just going to do our first names. You can use whatever name you want. It's up to you. This is your thing, okay? So use whatever name you want. So I'm going to use Valerie. Now watch what happens when I grab the corner. See how it gets much bigger now? By just dropping the cursor, I have way more control over my text than I did if I had just pulled a text box, which I do not want to do. Okay, here we go. I've got my name there. It looks horrible. It is in Myriad Pro font. Up here at the top, you can see this. It's called Myriad Pro. You notice this box at the top, this whole control bar, and if I go to my properties, have changed again because now I have type on the page. So it's giving me all the choices that I could use for type. So I can see here that by selecting this type, it's highlighted. It is Myriad Pro. I can also see it over here. It says the character is Myriad Pro. That is my type font. Okay. I do not want anyone using Myriad Pro for this project at all. If you use Myriad Pro, that will instantly get you a very bad grade because it shows me that you didn't make a choice. And this project is all about you making a choice. Okay. As a designer, we do not want to go with the default. Maybe you're saying to yourself, well, Miss White, I really love that font. That's fine. Find a different font that looks like that. You've got Helvetica. Looks very similar. You've got Arial. Looks very similar. Okay. So if you are dead set on this kind of a font, you have other options, but do not use Myriad Pro. And in fact, I would say you probably don't want to use this kind of font because it's not very fat. You want a fat font so that you can really fill it with really like a lot of colors and patterns. You don't want something so thin because then you don't have a lot of options there. It's pretty minimal in its options. So I'm going to pick a font that I think is great for this project, which is Impact. This is a great big font that has lots of space for fun. So Impact is a good choice for this one. You don't have to go with it, but it's a good basic choice. If at this point you really don't like any of the choices that you see here, like you can see here, I picked a different font that you are not going to have this option. How did I get this option? It's called Bubblegum. Here's how you can get more fonts that might not be in your default choices. So we're going to pause here. We're going to go to Safari. Where is my Safari? Okay, I'm going to use Chrome, but you're going to need to use Safari because Dafont, which is the website that we want to use here, it's called dafont.com. Here we go, DAFONT.com. This site is blocked on Chrome, but not on Safari for you. So go ahead, go to dafont.com and have some fun. Look around. You can go into any of these categories and find things, or you can go into the search bar up here on the right and search like, puffy, something like that, where maybe you wanted like bubble letters or something, search. And over here in the preview, you can type your name and say submit, and it will show you what your name looks like with these fonts. I will say, beware of these kind of fonts that look like this, where they have an outline. They won't work as well for our project as a solid font will. So I would definitely go with a font that is solid, not an outline, because you will probably run into some trouble if it's an outline. Can you get around it? Yes, but this is a quick project, so you might not want to do. Maybe we try bubble letters. Like this one here, bubble gum. That would be a really good one to use for this project. So would this one, bubble tea. Anyway, have some fun, find something you like. And then once you do, for example, let's say I want Bubble Baz here. I would click the download button. It's going to automatically download. Now, Safari puts your downloads up at the top here, not like Chrome does, but you're going to double click on the file. It's a zip file usually, and that zip file will open a folder here. And inside the folder, you're going to have some different things. And in this particular choice, Bubblegum, I have two different TTFs. You're looking for a TTF or an OTF file. Once you pick one that you like I like this one, I'm going to double click on the TTF file. And once this opens, say install. That's it. It's already in there now. It's called Bubble Baz. I'm going to close all these, go back to Illustrator. And if I wanted to change this to Bubble Baz, I go up here and I can either drop it down and search for it, or I can type it, and it'll give me anything that starts with that, and there it is. Okay. Now, here we go. You've got this typed. What do I do? What are some of the fun things I can do with this? Okay. One thing I can do with this is I'm already looking at this and I'm saying, oh, that's way too much space in between my V and my A as compared to like the I and the E here. I don't like the way that looks. So how do I fix that, Miss White? All right, what we're going to do is once you're sure you've got the right font, and once you're sure that you've typed it right and it's the size you want it to be, what we're going to do next is we're going to go up to the word object and we're going to say expand. This is only going to work if you have your text selected. If you don't have your text selected, there won't be a bounding box on it, and you also won't be able to expand anything because the computer doesn't know what you want to do. So you're going to click on the word and you're going to say object expand. And it's going to say, what do you want to expand? And you're just going to say, okay. And now you're going to say object ungroup. And you keep going up to the word object and ungroup until you can't ungroup anymore. I'm good. I only had to do it once. Now, if I click off of my piece, off of my text, like in the gray, and then click back on it, now you notice each letter is now a separate thing, and it's no longer type. I can no longer type with this anymore. It's now seeing it as a shape. So now if you click on here, you can see that with mine. If I click on it with my white arrow, my direct select arrow, notice now that I've got all these anchors. These are all called anchors. And I can click on an anchor and then click and drag, and I can move an anchor. I can adjust my type. Now, in my case, I'm going to say, if you click through and you find, see how my A doesn't have very many anchors, but my V has like tons of them? It's way too much to make any kind of wonderful adjustments on it. So what I'm going to suggest you do is if you use your white arrow and you click on a text, just say object, path, simplify. Go ahead and do that for some of the letters that have way too many anchors on them. And just simplify your path a little bit. That way you'll have a little bit more control, over your piece. So now when I move, when I move my anchor, it's a bigger move because there's less anchors there. Okay, so click on the A, object, path, simplify. Now see, you can oversimplify, so be careful. Okay, L, object, path, simplify. Let's just narrow these down just a slight bit. Get rid of all that junk there. Object, path, simplify. Much better. R, object, path, simplify. My I's okay, but it could probably be simplified a little bit. E, object, path, simplify. Okay, so now I'm ready to go. I can go in here with my white arrow and I can click on these individual anchors and move them. I can move the handles. I can adjust these and do whatever I want with these. I can overlap them, because you're going to change the colors later and all that kind of stuff. Another thing you can do besides all that I just did there, use your black arrow. You can just flat out scale up or down a letter, or squish it or whatever, just by using the whole thing, by using your black arrow. Okay. And another thing you can do is, again, I'm going to use my black arrow and I'm going to go like this, and I'm just going to drag an imaginary box over my whole name so everything is selected. And if you look over here in your layers, you can see your whole name layer is selected. If you're having trouble dragging an imaginary box over everything, you could just come over here to your layers and just click this circle next to this layer. Boom. And it will select everything in the layer. And you'll notice when you do that you have different options. We're going to warp this text, okay? So Oops. Okay, so we're going to go into Effect, Warp. And I'm just going to say arc for now because it's going to bring a pop-up window up and then we can adjust from there. All right. So again, that was a warp option here. And now you can see I can bend this up or down. I can play with it sideways, right and left. I have all these choices. I can do like a fisheye, a bulge, whatever, make it bigger, smaller. You can do all these crazy things with this. I'm going to set this back to 0 here and say, okay, so now I've got this is all warped here. And you can see that when I move the letters individually, it's going to change my warp a little. Okay, so that's another option. You can warp it. If you change your mind and you don't want the warp anymore, the best way to get out of that warp, again, I have to select them first. I'm going to select over here in my layers, is you can say window appearance. And that appearance will show you what you have going on with whatever's selected. So if I say here's that warp in the bulge and I don't want that, I click on it and I can delete it. Ooh, I didn't mean to delete the whole thing. I just want to delete the warp on it. Huh. There, and then just delete. So that'll take the warp off of the piece. So appearance window is a good one, handy one to have open if you need to get rid of something that's an effect. All right, now let's say you've got this all done and everything's worked the way you want it to and it's great and cute and blah, blah, blah. Now we want to start filling this with color. So how do I do that, right? I want to take each letter, click on it, and I'm going to come over here on the left-hand side, and you'll see you have a fill and a stroke. If I double-click on the black of my fill right there, I can fill this with whatever color I want. And if I double-click on the stroke, I can have a stroke going around the outside edge of it, whatever I want. It's very hard to see because it's kind of small, so I can up my stroke size. Okay, I can do that. And if I want that V to be in front of the A, maybe that's what I want, I can go over here to my layers and take this V. The way the layers work is whatever's on the back is in the bottom. Whatever's on the front is on the top. So if I want this V to be in front of the A, I could just move it in front of the A. Or I could move it in front of everything so it's in front of everything as it goes across. Now it's in front of everything. So that's how you adjust. You just drag and drop your layer order and it will put things in the right order. So I can just go through here and pick different colors to fill each letter with. Oops. I want that to be a fill, not a stroke. And if you don't want it to have a stroke at all, you can have the stroke look like this, where there's just a line through it. So for example, if I click on this V and I change my mind, I don't want this stroke, make sure that stroke is on top. It's going to fill whatever thing, it's going to address whatever is on top, my fill or my stroke. So I'm going to click my stroke so it's on top here. And then I'm going to click this little box below it that says none. Oops, got to select the item first. There. So now I just took the stroke off. So you can see that when I click on this, it says, yes, you have a fill of this pink and a stroke of nothing. Okay. So I could go through and fill all my colors that way. But you have another option. There's so many options. Is you can click on a letter and go up to the top here. And when you drop down, you'll notice that you have swatches. And in these swatches, you have patterns, right? So there's only a couple patterns showing right now. But if you want to see even more patterns, you just go to the stack of library books right here. And you click it. And there are all these other things. And within here, there's all kinds of cool stuff. And patterns is one of them. And you could go in and be like decorative, nature, animal skins. And here is a whole bunch of animal skins. And I can be like, you know, oops, first I have to select the object. Oh, it's putting it on my stroke, not on my fill over here. That's why I can't see it. So if I flip this little flippy arrow, I can flip it so that it's going to my stroke there. It goes to whatever thing is on top. So there we go. So do whatever you want, make this really cool, have fun with it, stretch it, pull it, warp it, whatever. And I'm going to show you one more thing that you can do with this, and that is you can make this look 3D. So I'm going to grab my whole layer, which again, I could just grab this circle of this whole layer here, and I'm going to go up to the word window and go to 3D and materials and open up this 3D materials window. And here I'm going to pick one of these. You can pick whatever one you want. I'm going to say inflate. Now, the problem is when you do this, notice it starts taking a long time. You could end up making your file be so big that it starts spinning and you freeze your computer. So be very careful. Don't go too crazy with it. But you can go inflate. You can change the depth of it. You can change, I don't know, my options just disappeared for a second there. Not exactly sure why. Here, so like I'll make that one really poofy or something. I can twist things. I don't even know what that's doing. And you have some other options in here called materials and lighting. So I can pick a material here from this choice of materials. And you can pick some of those. And you notice that when you pick a material, this one's called wax paint, that there are other options here as color variations, etc. And you also have lighting choices. So when I go with the lighting choices here, I can pick how intense the light is, where the light is coming from, what direction it's coming from. You see, like diffuse lighting, top left, top right, standard. So you can choose all those as well. So you have lots of fun options. You can play with all your fonts. I'm only using for this project my black selection tool, my white selection tool, direct selection tool, and my type tool. That's it over here, besides my stroke and fill and some of these windows I just showed you. The last thing you want to do before you turn this in is you want to give yourself a background. So I'm going to suggest here that you use this tool that is called the rectangle tool. This tool is right here in your toolbar, rectangle tool, last tool that you're going to use, and just pull an entire rectangle over the box. Now you notice it covered everything, right? And if you look over here in your layers, you notice that that rectangle covered everything that's here. It's on top of everything in my layers. What I want you to do is go down to the bottom of your layer panel and click the little plus so that you have a layer 2. I'm going to double click on layer 2 and I'm going to say background. And I'm going to drag this rectangle I just pulled into the background layer. I'm going to close my name layer. And now I'm going to flip-flop these two. I'm going to pull background below the name layer. So I have it like that. If I had my name layer open still, I could not pull this below. It would just put it inside. I don't want background to be inside the name layer. I want it to be its own layer. So I have to close the name layer first and then flip-flop the order of these two layers. And now I have a background color. I can click on that circle to select the background color, and I can still double click in my fill and I can make that background color whatever I want. And now I'm ready. I'm really happy with this. I don't think I'm going to do any more editing. Again, I want to change I changed my mind, of course. I'm going to move this E below the L. I think it needs to be behind. I in front. And I'm put this last E behind because I want this to go behind the I. Okay. So now I'm happy with this whole thing. I want to move this over a little bit. Don't worry about your background going outside of the art box. Nothing outside of the art box, which is this white space here, nothing outside of it prints. So as long as your stuff is inside of that, it will print, and whatever's outside will not, as long as you save it correctly. So I'm now going to show you how to save this document and turn it in.